Inside this box is the Crown Prince of Korea. His own father put him there. It will take him 8 days to die, and the king who ordered it will not once change his mind. Confucian law forbade a king from spilling his own son's blood, so the king found a way to kill him that technically didn't. The box was the loophole. Yeongjo's reign, by most measures, is remembered as one of the dynasty's most stable and accomplished. Reforms, cultural achievement, a genuine golden age for Joseon Korea, at least on paper. Yeongjo himself came to power through a difficult, contested succession, a fact historians argue shaped his own extreme intolerance for anything that might threaten the stability of his line going forward. This happens inside the Joseon dynasty, one of the most rigid Confucian court systems in East Asian history, ruled by one of its longest-serving and most accomplished kings. His older half-brother's early death had already shaken the succession once, which is exactly why so much relief and so much pressure attaches itself to Sado from the very moment of his birth. Sado is born in 1735, the king's second son. His older half-brother had already died young, which means Sado is now, unexpectedly, the heir to the entire kingdom. His birth is treated as a moment of genuine relief for the entire dynasty. The succession secured again after the earlier loss, expectations already forming around him before he can even speak. From infancy, everything about his life is arranged around this single fact. He is raised not as a child, but as a future king. Every lesson, every gesture, judged against a standard almost nobody could meet. King Yeongjo is famous for his own discipline and intellect, and he expects nothing less from his heir. When Sado falls short, the king corrects him openly in front of the very officials the boy will one day need to command. Yeongjo had come to the throne himself only after years of political uncertainty, and historians argue this shaped an almost obsessive insistence that his heir show none of the weakness he associated with his own difficult path to power. The king appears to hold his son to a standard drawn, partly from his own idealized memory of what a crown prince should be, a standard that may never have been realistic for any child raised under this level of constant scrutiny. The boy grows increasingly timid under this pressure, which only seems to frustrate his father further. Historical accounts describe a relationship built almost entirely on fear rather than warmth, from Sado's earliest memories onward. His mother offers little relief. Deferential to the king above all else, she rarely intervenes on her son's behalf, leaving the boy with no consistent source of comfort inside a court built entirely around performance and correction. At 9 years old, he is formally married to Lady Yeongjo, herself only a child, in a ceremony arranged entirely for political and dynastic reasons, rather than anything resembling personal choice for either of them. Both still children themselves at the time of their marriage, the two spend their early years together simply learning how to survive inside a court that offered neither of them much room for genuine choice. As Sado grows older, something in him begins to shift. He develops sudden fits of anger, physical outbursts that seem disproportionate to whatever triggered them, alarming to those around him. He begins wandering in disguise beyond the palace walls, behavior entirely improper for a crown prince. Rumors of his conduct outside the court start reaching officials faster than anyone can contain them. Lady Yeongjong's memoir describes nights where he seemed unable to calm himself at all, pacing for hours, his distress escalating without any clear trigger she could identify or address. Then the accounts grow darker. According to his own wife's later memoir, he begins attacking palace servants, eunuchs, ladies-in-waiting, people with no power to resist or report him safely. Officials responsible for these records face their own quiet dilemma: how much to document honestly, and how much to soften when the person responsible was the future king of Joseon himself. Multiple deaths among palace staff are recorded during this period, their causes left deliberately vague in official documents, the kind of silence that historians still find difficult to interpret with any certainty. She raises their children inside this same unstable household, managing the practical realities of daily palace life, while her husband's condition, whatever its true nature, continues to deteriorate around her. His wife, Lady Yeongjong, lives through all of this directly at his side. Decades later, she will write the account historians rely on most heavily to understand what actually happened during these years, with everything that implies about bias and memory. Sado's instability doesn't exist in a political vacuum either. The Joseon court is divided into rival factions, the Noron and Soron, locked in a long-running struggle for influence that predates Sado's birth by generations. That earlier dispute had already cost lives and reshaped alliances across an entire generation of officials, leaving deep institutional memory that made this new crisis feel, to many at court, uncomfortably familiar. This factional rivalry predates Sado entirely, rooted in disputes over royal succession from a generation earlier. Disputes that never fully resolved, leaving every subsequent succession crisis vulnerable to the same old fault lines. King Yeongjo is aligned with the Noron faction, who increasingly view the unstable crown prince as both a genuine danger and a serious political liability to their continued influence once he eventually takes the throne. Whether every rumor reaching the king was accurate is impossible to fully verify now. Some historians argue the situation, whatever its real severity, was deliberately amplified by officials with every reason to see the prince removed. Court physicians who examine him leave notably cautious, ambiguous reports, enough to note serious concern, not enough to commit to language that might be used later as definitive evidence either way. Even among officials sympathetic to Sado, private doubts circulate about how much of what reached the king's ears was accurate observation versus deliberate exaggeration, serving someone else's political interest. Whatever the true balance between genuine illness and political exaggeration, by 1762, the king had heard enough. The reports reaching him described a crown prince too dangerous and unstable to ever safely inherit the throne. According to Lady Yeongjong's account, even Sado's own mother eventually appealed to the king directly, not to save her son, but to ask that he be dealt with, for the sake of protecting the dynasty and her grandson's future. Attendants preparing the courtyard that morning move with an unusual formality, several later accounts suggest, as though at least some of them already sensed what the day was actually being arranged for. On July 4, 1762, King Yeongjo summons his son to court. Sado, according to the record, seems to understand immediately that this is not an ordinary audience. The king demands his son take his own life, the customary expectation for a disgraced royal facing this level of accusation. Sado, by every account, refuses. Whether from fear, defiance, or simple disbelief, he will not comply. At least one minister is later recorded as having stepped forward as though to object, then thought better of it. A small, telling moment of hesitation that changed nothing about what followed. Several officials present that day are later recorded as visibly uneasy, sensing where the confrontation is heading, though none moves to intervene against the king's rising, unmistakable resolve. With no legal precedent for punishing a crown prince, and Confucian law forbidding the direct shedding of royal blood, the king turns to a solution with no real precedent in Joseon history. A rice chest is brought into the courtyard. Sado is ordered inside it. According to the record, he enters without significant struggle, whether from exhaustion, resignation, or simple disbelief that his father would actually go through with it. The lid is sealed, guards are posted, and then, for 8 days, in the middle of a Korean summer, the Crown Prince of Joseon is simply left there, without food or water, while the court above him continues functioning. His children, including the boy who would become King Yeongjo, are also kept well away from the courtyard during this period, shielded from witnessing the final days directly, though certainly not from understanding what was happening. Lady Yeongjo, by her own account, is kept away from the courtyard entirely during this period, a detail that means even her own later memoir cannot describe those 8 days from direct, first-hand observation. The rest of the palace, remarkably, continues its normal rhythms during this time. Ceremonies proceed. Officials attend to routine business. The dying prince becomes, in the space of a single day, something the court has simply learned not to discuss. The guards assigned to watch the chest carry out their duty without recorded protest, following the king's order the same way any other formal instruction would be carried out inside this rigidly hierarchical court. Whether the king ever visited the chest during those 8 days, or showed any outward sign of doubt, the historical record simply doesn't say. His public composure, by every surviving account, never visibly breaks. By the 8th day, Sado is dead, from dehydration, heat, and slow suffocation inside a box never designed to hold a living person for more than a few hours at most. By the next formal court session, proceedings continue almost exactly as before, a sign perhaps of just how thoroughly Confucian court protocol could absorb even an event of this magnitude into routine, procedural silence. The official announcement that follows is careful and procedural. No mention of cruelty, no acknowledgement of the method's brutality, simply the death of a crown prince whose conduct had made his continued position untenable. Sado's own young son, later to become King Yeongjo, witnesses the aftermath of all of this as a child, a detail that will shape the rest of his life and reign in ways the court likely didn't fully anticipate at the time. Those close to Yeongjo describe a ruler who never fully separated his own reign from his father's memory, carrying the weight of what he'd witnessed as a child into decades of careful, deliberate governance. Decades later, once Yeongjo finally takes the throne himself, he moves carefully but deliberately to rehabilitate his father's memory, restoring honors, commissioning memorials, treating the rice chest execution as an injustice rather than a necessary correction. Lady Yeongjo writes her own account decades after the events themselves, in 1805. The The primary source nearly every modern retelling of this story ultimately depends on, written by a woman who survived by carefully managing her own political position. Historians have noted that her account itself exists in multiple versions, written at different points in her life, each one shaped in part by whatever her own political survival required at that particular moment. Which leaves the central question genuinely unresolved. Was Sado a genuinely dangerous, violently unstable man his father had no real choice but to remove? Or was he a traumatized young man, failed by his father, then destroyed by a court that needed him gone? Modern historians remain divided. Some treat him as a victim of a father's cruelty and a court's political convenience. Others take the accounts of his violence seriously enough to see a man whose illness genuinely endangered those around him. Choose one interpretation, and you've already decided how much you trust a single memoir written decades later by the one person with every reason and every incentive to shape how her husband would ultimately be remembered. Visitors to the palace grounds today can walk directly across the spot without any marker telling them what happened there, the courtyard itself giving up nothing about the 8 days it once held. What isn't disputed is the method itself. A father, a legal technicality, and 8 days inside a box, chosen specifically because it let everyone involved insist, technically, that no blood had been spilled at all.